Hello guys and welcome to the first ever What's for Dinner on Wancha's World. On the menu this fine Sunday is a type of black beans known as njahe or hyacinth beans. They are delicious and really healthy and nutritious. They get a bad rap, but if you cook them really well, they are amazing and a great accompaniment for rice. What we have here is a sorry attempt at trying to mise en place my ingredients, but we do what we can to be great on this channel. We're going to chop up this onion into a small dice. And what we're going to do also is we are going to grate about 3 cups worth of carrots. Use as many carrots as you can get away with because this is how you get your kids to eat veggies without yelling at them. At this point, I'm going to take these onions and put them in a bowl because I'm trying to use up one chopping board because the less dishes, the happier I am. I'm going to cut up this tomato, and if you notice, I added 1 extra tomato, bringing the total to 2. Now, we're going to move over to the stove, and I'm going to add about 5 tablespoons of oil to this. Now, this might seem like a lot, but trust me, it's not. Like I said, these beans get a bad rap, and the reason why they get a bad rap is because a lot of people fry them and are stingy with the ingredients. But the key to having a delicious tasting njahes is being extra generous with your ingredients. We're going to put in our onions and we're going to cook them until they're golden brown. Do not turn away from your onions for too long. There's a fine line between golden brown and cockroaches, aka burnt onions, because burnt onions look like cockroaches floating on your food, right? I mean, it cannot be just me. Then once this has come to the color that we want, we're gonna add the carrots, and we're gonna stir. Now, please don't leave any carrots behind. Remember, the veggies are your saving grace, and you'll see why I'm saying this at the end of this night. We're gonna stir this, and to this I'm going to add about a tablespoon and a half of tomato paste. Now, I love tomato paste. I like how thick it makes my sauce. I like how the color that it gives to my food. Yeah, and there we go. I threw in the tomatoes as well. I could say enough good things about about tomato paste, other than the fact that it means that I don't get to use a lot of plastic Tupperware, but that's fine. I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of turmeric. Now, turmeric is a wonder ingredient. It has an earthy flavor and it's really delicious. I'm going to add it straight into my oil because I want to kick up its flavor. I want to waken it up because it's been sitting in my spice cabinet for some time. So get that in there and give this a good stir. Now, here comes the tomato paste. I hope. There we go. We're going to add about a tablespoon and a half of this. And first I'm finishing up what I had in my fridge before I take the new can that I just opened. I think that's about half a tablespoon's worth. And then I'm going to take 1 tablespoon. And because this is a new can and I've already taken out what I was putting in the fridge, I'm going to go to all the nooks and crannies of this tin and make sure that no tomato paste is left behind. I'm going to really clean this up. Now, I'm going to use an ingredient that is not very common here in America, and it's almost like an all-purpose seasoning. It's called Royco. It is available here because we have importers who bring it in from Kenya. And if anybody's interested, I can also link that in the description box for anybody who'd be interested to buy it. So what I do with my Royco is I don't just add it directly onto my food, which you can, and you'd be perfectly fine. I always mix it with water and add it into my food. I don't know why. Growing up, my mom did this the few times that we used Royco, and so I still do that. And I find it mixes better with my food than if I just throw it in. So what you'll notice is I'm just giving this a few minutes to cook down. I'm taking that same container that had the tomato paste in the fridge, and I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of Royco. And I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of chicken stock. Now, if I can avoid it, I don't cook with water. If I have chicken stock, I will always pick chicken stock over water, but you don't have to. If you want to cook with a water, that's fine. Your food will still turn out great. Don't worry about it. So I'm gonna add a quarter cup of chicken stock to my Royco, and then I'm gonna stir it up real good, and then I'm gonna put it in here with the carrots and the onions and the tomatoes. You know, this little mixture that I've got going on here. And then once I put it in there, I was gonna say once I throw it in there, but that's not what you're gonna do. You're just gonna gently pour it in. Don't throw it in. Once I get it in there, I'm gonna stir this and I'm gonna let it like cook down for 3 minutes. Don't worry about cooking it all the way through. It's gonna cook all the way through once you add in your beans. Now, once this is done, at this point, I'd like to say that after this stage, my camera died. So after I did this, I just added my beans and 3 cups of stock and let it cook for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And once it reduced down, this is the final ingredient. This is the final product. I threw in 2 random meatballs that I found in my fridge. And because we don't waste food, I was like, oh, wouldn't you know it? 2 meatballs. Threw it in there and served my people 1 meatball each. And they were very happy. I was going to make a cabbage with this meal, but I got tired and I didn't, so oh womp. It was still delicious. Thank God for the carrots. Saved the day because I may not have made a veggie, but we still had veggies. Would I have wanted to make more veggies? Yes. Was I able to? No. But that's motherhood. And that was the end of day 1. Day 2, my family decided they wanted broccoli cheddar soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. That meant I didn't have to cook, and perfectly good with me. Day 3, on the menu, we had mashed potatoes, salmon, and broccoli. And what I'm doing first is I'm greasing the baking sheet because I want to put it in the oven, and as the oven preheats, I want it to heat up together with the heat up together with the oven. That way, when I put my salmon on the baking sheet, it's gonna crisp up the skin. However, I'll hit it with a broil at the end, but let's just hang around and I'll show you how I did it. So that's me spreading the oil and then putting it in the oven and setting my oven for 235. I'm going to start my mashed potatoes here. I have potatoes and I'm putting in cold water. For root veggies, you always want to start them with cold water. Root veggies always start with cold water. That way, you don't have your veggies getting ready on top and the inside is still raw. So I'm adding just enough water to cover the potatoes, and then I'm gonna put a lid on those. Keep an eye on those so that they don't boil over. So once the oven comes to temperature, I leave the baking sheet in there for about an extra 5-10 minutes, and that way when I put the salmon on there, the baking sheet is nice and piping hot. Now, full disclosure, I did not thaw my salmon before this, so it is still rock hard. However, when I remembered that I needed to make salmon, I took it out and marinated it immediately, and yeah, it's rock hard here. I'll write down in the description box of what I used to marinate it, but just hear the sound effect when that hits the tin. Yeah, so this is perfect. I want to try and create space so that this do not crowd each other. I want to have enough space between, because I know my salmon is frozen, but I don't want it to get into the oven and steam. I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm going to leave enough space between the pieces, and then I'm going to take a brush and all that marinade that's been left in the bowl, I'm going to take it and I'm going to brush it on top of the pieces of salmon. Then I'm going to cover it with a piece of foil. The reason why I'm doing that, I do not want this to dry out when it goes into the oven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it up with a piece of foil. I'll cook it for 25 minutes, and then when the 25 minutes are up, I'll uncover it and I'll broil it for about 3 minutes just so it can catch some color on top. Checking on my potatoes, they're still cooking. I'm going to start the broccoli. Well, that's not going to be enough. So I go to hunt for some more broccoli and I find some. Now, I make my broccoli very simply. All I do is I put some broccoli, salt, butter and pepper. However, if you look at this recipe in particular, I did not add any salt. There's the butter. I added about 3 tablespoons of butter, and I'm gonna put about a teaspoon of black pepper. I don't have accurate measurements for this. I just go by, I mean, I really just go by feeling. We don't like a lot of pepper, but a teaspoon looks like a reasonable amount. So yeah, that's a teaspoon of black pepper, and it's freshly cracked because nothing tastes better than freshly cracked black pepper. I'm gonna just cover this at a low heat and let it almost steam because the broccoli is frozen. So what will happen is as the steam rises, as the broccoli thaws, it's also gonna cook. Now, this store-bought gravy is the reason why I didn't put any salt into my food. I'm gonna take 1 pack of gravy mix and I'm gonna mix it with a microwave safe dish with 1 cup of cold water. I'm gonna mix it in and I'm gonna microwave it in increments of 1 minute for 3 minutes, if that makes sense. So after 28 minutes, my salmon is out of the oven and look at it, it looks really good. What I'm going to do is I'll take a spoon and I'll baste it with these juices that have flowed out just to keep it moist. Fun fact, I don't eat salmon, but my family said that the salmon was delicious and I believe them. You don't even want to know what I ate with this meal because I suffered. So I'm gonna baste it just to keep it moist, and then I'm gonna put it to the side. My mashed potatoes, I added 4 tablespoons of butter and half a cup of whipping cream. Once again, you wouldn't believe I'm lactose intolerant from the way I cook. So once I add in the whipping cream, I'm gonna just cover this shortly just to give the whipping cream some room to boil and the butter some time to melt. And once that is done, I'm gonna mash it up. And this was the meal for this was Tuesday. Yeah, this is Tuesday. They said it was delicious. The mashed potatoes was yum. The broccoli was perfectly cooked. It was crispy and thawed, I guess. A lot of times I serve broccoli with frozen centers. So when I say thawed, it's because my family has suffered. So keep an eye on your gravy because my gravy boiled over and that's why it's sitting on a serviette. You'll notice is it a serviette? No, that's why it's sitting on a paper towel because you'll notice the paper towel sticks to it because it boiled over and I had the extra job of cleaning my microwave. I was not happy, but well, what to do? Accidents happen in the kitchen and that's life. So this was my husband I was serving, and I'm just gonna take that gravy and I'm just gonna pour it all over the mashed potatoes. This gravy is really salty, so when you cook everything else, try to really go easy on the salt because the gravy will more than make up for that. And that's the meal. It was delicious. Day I honestly lost count what day this is. On the menu we have chapati and cowboy beans. I'm not really gonna go over how I made my flour because I plan on making a how-to video for how to do chapati. So what I have here is my dough that's come together. I'm just rolling it. I take the whole dough and separate it into 3 balls depending on the size of the dough. And what I'm doing here is I want to do the layers. So I rolled out this one big piece and I put some oil. I like to use a pastry brush just so that I don't put in too much oil. Once I rub that in, put some flour, use a pizza cutter to cut out strips, and then make little balls. And this is how you make perfectly layered chapatis. At least that's how I make them. There's like a lot of methods out there, but I find this to be the easiest and the most convenient for me. So I'm gonna do that to all the flour until I have everything ready. And then once all of them are done, I'm going to cover them and set them aside just so that they rest. The key to making chapatis is to just letting them rest after each stage so that your gluten relaxes, because if you don't let it relax, what will happen is when you try and roll, it's going to keep pulling back in itself. Starting on the beans, I'm going to cut up this onion. So I'm gonna use canned beans. When don't I ever use canned beans? I like canned beans because canned beans are really convenient. So I have 1 can of pinto beans and I have 3 cans of kidney beans. However, I will add 1 can of black beans to create the united colors of beans. I'm gonna cut up my onion into small cubes. My recipe calls for half a pound of bacon. I have 1 pound of bacon. It's frozen. Wouldn't you know it? I did not thaw it. But that's perfectly fine because frozen bacon cuts just okay. So put the onion aside, and once again I'm on a 1 chopping board mission. So I'm gonna open up the bacon. And whoever invented the packaging of bacon must be an expert in cruel and unusual punishments, because opening bacon up is just stressful. It's more stressful than it needs to be honest. So get that open, and then what I'm gonna do is, forgive me in advance because I'm gonna cut this in a very unconventional way, but I'm gonna cut it halfway. And like I said, frozen bacon cuts just fine. So and cut that up, and cut my bacon into small cubes. I like to cook my cowboy beans in my Instapot. These are not really cowboy beans. I call them cowboy beans, but they probably have another name because they're not exactly cowboy beans. But oh well. I'm gonna use my Instapot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug it in and set it on saute for 30 minutes. Put my bacon in and just cook it until it renders down fat and catches color. We're going to use the bacon fat that's rendered to cook this entire meal. I'm not going to add any extra oil because the bacon is really greasy, and it gives a good enough amount of oil that I don't need to do that. Meanwhile, as that is cooking, I'm going to go back to my chapatis because what is multitasking? I'm going to start with the chapatis, and I cook my chapatis 3 at a time. It's a lifesaver. It means that I don't get tired from cooking too many chapatis. I can cook a lot of chapatis at once. So I always roll out the 3 that I'm going to work with and have them ready. Then once I roll out my chapatis, I dry them. And once I have 3 chapatis dried, I oil them, put them aside, and start on the next 3. That might not make sense, but I'm going to show that. So I'm going to roll. In the beginning, my first couple of chapatis, I don't get them into perfect circles, but as I go, I get my mojo, and before you know it, my chapatis are perfectly circled. As you roll this, try to evenly distribute the pressure, because you don't want to get the center to be too thin. You want your chapati to be even from corner to corner. It's round, it has no corners. I hope you understand what I mean. Like, as you roll, try not to focus all your energy in the middle so that you don't have your chapati being too thin in the middle. For a first chapati, I'm doing pretty good on the shape, if I do say so myself. So I'm going to roll the 3 of them and put them to the side. Then I'll start cooking them. Now, these chapatis are a labor of love, but once you master them, oh my goodness, they go really well with beans, they go really well with lentils, they go really well with what are they called? I can't remember what else I wanted to say, but chapatis are just chapatis. Oh yeah, they go really well with tea. The breakfast meal, a nice dinner meal. I never used to like chapatis this much, but listen to me just waxing lyrical about chapatis right now. So roll the second one. Like I said, I like to have what I'm going to work on and just have them ready. Then that way, when I start cooking, I'll just pick one up and then get the next one and then get the next one without having to pause. As I'm drying the first round, once I'm done, as I start oiling them, is when I'll start rolling for the second round. Does that make sense? I think it does. So it's going to take a bit of time to just roll them out. I take my time just so that I get a nice shape. They're not always going to be the same size, but if an inspector comes and the one thing they can fault me on is my chapatis, I think that's okay. I'll live with those odds. That's the second one. I want to crack out the third one. Oh yes, and I'm also going to make a cabbage. I'm just going to steam the cabbage, so I don't really need to go over that. Oil your rolling pin, oil your surfaces generously so that your chapatis don't stick. I'm sorry if me grabbing flour out of my main tub is irking you, I should probably put the flour that I'm going to use in a separate place. But you know my policy, the less dishes that I have to clean, the happier I am. And that's how we work in this kitchen. Make as little dishes as possible, dirty, and mama is happy. So you put flour in a separate container and work with it, and that's perfectly fine. So the third one is almost ready, and I mean, looking at them now, maybe I was being too hard on myself. They look nice and round. Yeah, I think I can work with that shape. So the third one is well and good. Let's check on the beans before we start cooking. So the bacon is well and done. I added onions, and it looked like it's dry. So I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of chili powder. I'm gonna add to this 2 teaspoons of chili powder. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of brown mustard. Yeah, this was burning now that I look at it. But I kept telling myself, no, it's not burning. But now that I look at it, I see it's burning. So stir this up, and once it starts looking like this, I realize if I don't put in my beans, it will not be salvageable. So I'm gonna add my beans. Remember, I had 3 cans of kidney beans. At 3 cans of kidney beans, I have 1 can of pinto beans, and the pinto bean can was bigger than the kidney beans, so it's almost like I have 2 cans of pinto beans, and then I have 1 can of black beans. That is a colorful pot of beans, but eat your colors and they're healthy. To this, I'm gonna stir this really well. I don't know, I need to call this something other than cowboy beans, because I know they're not cowboy beans, because cowboy beans is bacon, I think. It helped me come up with a name for this kind of beans, or I'll just keep calling them cowboy beans. I'm gonna add a quarter cup of brown sugar. I'm gonna add a quarter cup of brown sugar, a quarter cup of ketchup, and a quarter cup of brown sugar barbecue sauce. I ran out of barbecue sauce, so we have, that's tomato blood. That's the Halloween ketchup. The Halloween ketchup right there. Beautiful name. My daughter sees it and she's like, I don't want to eat tomato blood. You cannot convince her that that's ketchup. So after we bought this and she saw it, we had to run back and buy ketchup because she wouldn't eat this. She'd be like, that's tomato blood. I'm not a vampire. I'm not going to eat blood. Aren't kids cute? So I went through my pantry, and this is the kind of barbecue sauce that I had. Sweet Vidalia. That's what happens when you send my husband shopping. He is an adventurous shopper. He'll just buy things just based on him wanting to experiment on them. So I'm gonna add a quarter of a cup of barbecue sauce. I'm gonna use up everything that we have here, just so that I can get rid of it, because I find it really hard to use this kind of barbecue sauce in something that does not have onion or onion powder. So because the beans have onions, I'm gonna just use up all this. Then I'm gonna stir this up. I'm gonna check it for seasoning and see if it needs any more salt, but a lot of times I don't usually add salt to this. We are a family that eats very little salt, and that's because we prefer to salt our food at the table, because we all have different levels of preference for salt. So sometimes I'd rather just not add any salt at all to the food if I can avoid it. And this is one of those meals that I'll not add salt, and we actually find it bearable. We were able to eat it without adding any salt. And then to this, I'm gonna add, you guessed it, chicken stock. And I'm gonna add one pack of chicken stock, which has 4 cups. Yeah, 4 cups of chicken stock. And then I'm just gonna put this on slow cook, and I'm gonna cook this on slow cook for 1 hour. And then I'm just gonna let the Instapot like release on its own. So in total, they're probably gonna cook for 1.5 hours, and then just keep warm for the period. These beans are delicious. They come out so good. I cannot, I mean, I cannot. Looking at them now, I want to go back and make some. I want to go back and make a pot and just eat them. And they go really well with rice as well. If you like rice and beans, this is a perfect recipe for rice and beans. Like, yeah,
black
and then
pepper.
freshly ground black pepper, because what do you know? Everything tastes better with a little pepper in it. And now let's cook the chapatis. So here I am. I'm drying the first chapati, and you're not trying to get it cooked all the way through. I'm just trying to dry it up just so that it can start cooking on the inside. So there we are. That one's dry, and like I said, I cook my chapatis 3 at a time. So that's the second one. And then I like to use a pastry brush or a silicone brush to help regulate the amount of oil that I use. I found when I used to use a spoon, my chapatis would be very greasy, and they just don't come out too well for me. I don't like greasy food, so greasy chapatis were just not it for me. So dry up the second one, and when your chapatis are well layered, you'll see them like you'll see the bubbles as you cook them, and that's just the layers forming. If you can avoid it, don't press on them once they start doing that, because if you press on it, you're disallowing the bubbles to form. Is disallowing a word? Sometimes I just throw words around and I'm not even sure if they're real English words. So if disallowing is not an English word, forgive me. You are refusing for the bubbles to form. If I can say that. There's a third one. And if you're not able to do this, it is perfectly fine to do one chapati at a time. What you'll do is you'll just dry it on both sides, then you'll oil it and then cook one side and then oil the other side and cook it. I just do this because I've been making chapatis since I was a little girl, and I find that by making 3 I'm able to do it really fast and I'm able to be efficient. So I do a lot of multitasking in the kitchen, so anything that can help me make the time move faster and make me more efficient as I work is always a plus in my books. So there's a third chapati, and once I put that down, I now take all the chapatis and put them back. I'm going to take my pastry brush and I'm just going to brush it lightly with oil. Remember that already when we were kneading the dough, we used oil. When I was rolling it to put the layers, I used oil. So at this point, when you come to cooking, you really do not need to use a lot of oil. Your chapatis are already oiled from the beginning. It's like when you're seasoning food and you start seasoning it from the beginning, you don't need to over season your food, because the layers of seasoning that you've added to your food, they carry through. It's the same with your chapatis. The layers of oil that you've been putting, they carry through. So that means that you just don't have to add a lot of oil at this stage. So some people believe that oil is what makes your chapati soft, but it really isn't. What makes your chapati soft is how well you knead your dough. You need to you need to knead your dough really well, work those gluten fibers really well, the gluten strands, and that is what makes your chapati soft. So oil is not it. There's no need to make your chapatis greasy just because you think they're going to be soft. Like I said, I'm going to do a how-to video one of these days on chapatis from the beginning to the end. That's why I'm not dwelling so much on the chapatis. I said as I did another 3 minutes on the chapatis. So I really don't know how to explain what I'm doing at this point, but if you look, you'll see. I turn the chapatis, flip it. So once I flip it, I flip the next one that's next to the side that's cooking, and then I oil that at the top. I'll explain that in detail when I do the how-to video, because it's getting confusing. So here we are. All 3 chapatis are well cooked. I flip them again just to look at them, and then I notice if there's a side that's looking a little pale, I leave it at the top, and then once I take down everything, I'm going to put it back on the heat just so I can catch some color. At this point, all the chapatis are cooked. I'm just trying to achieve the perfect color that I want on them. So cook that, and when you're doing that, you don't need to add any oil. And there we go. My chapatis are all beautifully golden, so I can start putting them together with the other ones. Isn't that beautiful? The magic of filming. I already have like all my chapatis ready. So this was the last batch, and as you can see, like they fold really well. it just means that like they're really soft and they pull apart and they have the most amazing layers. So there's the other one that I'm just waiting for to catch color, and then my daughter would say voila. So those are ready. I use the old pack of flour that I had just to store them. I don't know why. And that's the finished product. We have chapati and the cowboy beans and steamed cabbage. My last cooking day of the week, honestly, I lost count at this point. So on this day, I have fries and nuggets, and it's gonna be full of shortcuts because at this point I am exhausted after cooking for the whole week. And do you see that little person hanging out on my back? She has had the ride of her life. She always does. She just loves hanging out on my back. So read the package instructions on your fries, line a baking sheet with foil, and then cook your fries as per the package instructions. That's me confirming just how long I need to do this for. So I decided to complicate my life. I'm gonna make chips masala. So I'm gonna need an onion, some tomato sauce, some chili sauce, and could we have just had this with just the plain fries? Yes, but I'm extra, so that's just me. So I'm gonna chop up this onion, and I'm gonna chop it up into a fine dice, and then we're gonna move over to the stove. Three tablespoons of oil. I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons of canola oil, and once I have enough of that, I'm gonna throw in my onions. Fry my onions until they turn golden brown. I never learn. Now, I did not want to do golden brown onions, but because I multitask, I looked away, and when I came back, the onions are golden brown. So we'll just walk with I wanted golden brown onions. So I'm gonna add in my onions, and I'm gonna give this a good stir. And at this point, I needed to go do something. I think I needed to go put my fries in the oven, or I just needed to do something. And a lot of times when I multitask, I forget stuff. So we did not want golden brown onions to start with, but we got golden brown onions, and the food was still delicious. So, que sera, sera. So stir your onions. Don't overstir your onions, because if you overstir your onions, what happens is they become like a big ball of oil and they all just gather in the middle. So you don't want that. Do you see that? I almost lost my onions. Thank God I came in just in the nick of time. I have 1 16-ounce can of tomato sauce. It is perfectly fine to use whole tomatoes if you have them. I don't use a lot of tomatoes in my cooking, so I don't buy a lot of tomatoes. I do, however, have a lot of canned tomato products. I have tomato sauce. I have tomato paste. I actually have fire roasted tomatoes. I feel like because I don't use as many tomatoes, my canned tomatoes last me a longer time, so I tend to invest in that more. I'm gonna add 2 heaped teaspoons of tomato paste because this is me and we always cook with tomato paste. Now this is gonna be a tomato based sauce, and because of that, I'm gonna have a lot of tomato products, because to this I'm actually gonna add about 3 ounces of chili sauce. Now this chili sauce is just, it's not hot, like it doesn't come through in the food. If you don't have the chili sauce, you can add ketchup. I think at this point the reason why I was using the chili sauce is because I had bought this for one recipe and I had never used it again after that recipe, so I was kind of trying to finish it up, and that's why I was using it. My daughter was not going to be eating the chips masala because she decided that she wanted to do plain fries, so that was fine by me. I'm going to add some ginger powder, and I'm going to add about a teaspoon of ginger powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and I'm going to add some paprika. About I did a teaspoon of ginger, a teaspoon of garlic, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of paprika as well. Then I'm going to add some garam masala, and I'm going to add about a tablespoon of garam masala. Now, when I was using garam masala on this day, it got finished. And after that, I really tried to think, what spice is it that I was using that I ran out of? but I couldn't for the life of me remember. And I went through my cabinets and I looked through, but I couldn't figure out what I ran out of. And then now that I'm going through this video as I'm doing this voiceover, I'm like, oh yes, it was garam masala. So I'm actually just gonna put garam masala onto my list the minute I walk out of here. That's 2 half teaspoons of the garlic powder, making for 1 teaspoon. And you don't have to measure this. You can go as you like with the quantities. I don't know why I used the teaspoon measure for the garlic powder, but oh well, I guess I did. That's the paprika, and I'm going to use a teaspoon of that as well. And I'll be honest with you, I'm never able to pick out the flavor of paprika. A lot of times when I use paprika, I just use it because I like the color and I want the color of my food elevated. So there we go. This is my garam masala. It's gonna give me just about a teaspoon. If you don't have garam masala, you can use pilau masala. I've seen people use tea masala. To each their own. I either use garam masala or I use pilau masala. So I'm gonna use 1 tablespoon of garam masala. Then I'm gonna stir this. I will also add roiko. Now remember how I said that you don't add roiko. I mean, you can add roiko directly to food, but I prefer to add it in water because I'm not going to be using a lot of water in this sauce. I prefer to add it just directly onto my food and just really mix it in and just make sure that I don't have little balls of roiko hanging out in separate places on the sauce. Then I'm going to cook down this sauce until I see oil floating on the top. A lot of times if you want to know if a tomato-based soup has cooked out all the water in it, the oil floats on top and is separate from the rest. Then I'm going to add in my fries, which at this point I've taken out of my oven. Starr's Association, this is not for you. Do not overmix this because you don't want to break down your fries. I'm going to add in my cilantro, and once again I'm going to give this a gentle mix. At this point my nuggets are also in the oven because they were frozen nuggets. Like I said, this is a meal of shortcuts. If I hadn't decided to do this chips masala, the food would have been ready and we would have already been eating. So I'm glad though I decided to do the chips masala. It was good. It made this not seem so takeoutish, you know. So my chips masala are ready at this point. I'm just making sure the cilantro is well stirred in and goes all the way to the bottom, and we're ready to eat. Again, my little girl decided that she did not want chips masala because she doesn't like the finer things in life. So she had plain fries, and my husband and I had the chips masala and the nuggets. And I was gonna make salad on this day, but I don't know, for some reason I decided to make broccoli again, and broccoli in my house will always fly because we love broccoli. So that's the end of week 1 of What's for Dinner. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope to do more of this. Thanks. Bye bye.